Hello to my Patreon members. Thanks again so much for your ongoing support here on Patreon and on my video YouTube podcast, which is also now on MoPfi TV. This is the first time I'm going to be doing a director's ranked video. Thank you again for voting on the poll for different content that you'd like to see offered to you here on Patreon exclusively for Patreon members. So the director's ranked was something that people really liked on the poll. And so the choices this month were Sidney Lumet, William Friedkin, Spike Lee, and Elaine May, and Sidney Lumet has won. And so for me to do a Sidney Lumet video review of ranking all of his films, I'll be here for 2 or 3 hours because he made many films. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank one film from every decade that he made a film from the 1950s all the way until 1957 until 2007. And so I would say that it is, first of all, just thinking to rank Lumet is so difficult because he's probably my second favorite director. So I think the first one I'm gonna start with 1990s because I think really that was probably his least interesting decade. We certainly saw some good films there. Night Falls on Manhattan and Q&A. But a film I really like from that time is Q&A. That's with Nick Nolte. Is a really wonderful film. Again, was based on a book written by a judge. And, here we are again, this theme of police corruption in New York and someone standing up to do the right thing. The difference with this one is it plays a lot more like a thriller. It certainly has more of a action plot-based theme rather than like a psychological drama. But it's a really wonderful film, and Nick Nolte is absolutely fantastic. Timothy Hutton is great. Jenny Lumet, his daughter, is fantastic. There's Sidney Lumet's daughter is really Armand Asante is also brilliant. Everyone, it's got these moments that are just unforgettable. Actually, you can watch a 6-minute making of featurette, which you can find on YouTube for free. Sidney Lumet did rehearsals. He would rehearse the whole film for 2 weeks, like a stage play. You can see some of that rehearsal if anyone's interested. But there's a beautiful moment that stands out because Nick Nolte being the most corrupt character on the force, and Timothy Hutton says to him, if you're dirty, you're gonna go away. And just the look on his face, like, how dare you? Because, Timothy Hutton's father was a cop. He was friends with Nick Nolte. And here comes this guy who's not going to be like that. He's going to be honest. He's going to be clean. He's going to be good, just very much like Serpico. And just a look on Nolte's face, like, I'm not, how dare you? I don't have to stand here and listen to that shit from you. It's just an incredible moment when he realizes what Timothy Hutton is saying to him, and that he'll basically, wreak fury on him. So it's really good, but like I said, plays more like a thriller, less psychological than, say, Serpico. But it's just, if you want to look for a great corrupt cop film, New York style, Q&A is definitely great. After that, I would have to say his last film, if we jump into the 2000s, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, is another phenomenal film. He didn't make as many, this is his last feature film. Obviously, as he got older, he started to slow down. In that decade, he made a television movie, which I haven't seen, called Strip Search. Another film called Find Me Guilty with Vin Diesel, which is pretty good. If I had to flip a coin between Find Me Guilty and Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, certainly Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which is this melodrama of these two young guys who both, for various reasons, need money, these two brothers, and so they rob their own parents' mom and pop jewelry store in order they figured that because it's insured, their parents would be okay. And of course, something goes terribly wrong, and the mother gets killed in the jewelry store because Ethan Hawke has a partner and he sends a partner in on it. So of course, it turns into this awful story of these two guys who basically are responsible for the death of their mother. But it goes into all their relationships. The father was tough, he was cold, he was abusive. They have this great scene, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Albert Finney, where Albert Finney says that he always loved him, he knew he was tough on him, and Philip Seymour Hoffman basically rejects that, and Albert Finney smacks him in the face, and it's a brutal scene. At the same time, Ethan Hawke is having an affair with Philip Seymour Hoffman's wife, who's played by Marissa Tomei, and they're it's very icky. It's very, it's things are, on the one hand, you're willing to have an affair with your brother's wife. They're also willing to rob their own parents. These are people who just don't have much feeling for each other. So it's a cynical film, but it's the performances and the plot and the melodrama grabs you by the throat. And it's just a roller coaster ride. And I think really it's a remarkable film. Ethan Hawke also plays this guy who's, broke, he's divorced, he's got a daughter, he never has any money, he's a screw up. So they're all sort of in this web of dysfunction and ugliness and lack of feeling, lack of love. It turns into, because they're in some tight spots where, Philip Seymour Hoffman's trying to save his marriage, and he finds that when him and his wife are on vacation, they always get along a lot better. So he thinks if he can get some money to move away to these like tropical islands, that their marriage will be better. And I mean, that's sort of a naive look at things, but it's really, really good. If you haven't seen it, Albert Finney's fantastic, but it's dark, and it's fantastic. I would say really, really good. After that, I'm gonna have to jump into his first feature, which is 12 Angry Men. Of course, we reviewed it on our classic Hollywood movie review, one of our classic Hollywood movie review videos with the Movie Palace podcast, Carl Sweeney, and he picked 12 Angry Men. And of course, again, this is that time when there's so much pressure for one person to just go along with the crowd, and he says no. And I'm sure many of you have seen this film, and it centers around this jury room, 12 people for a murder trial. It looks like an open and shut case that this kid killed his father, and they're all ready to just vote guilty and leave. And one person says, no, let's really talk it out. We can't send this guy to the electric chair that quickly. And that leads to, every character has different reasons why they're saying guilty, but some of it is it's somewhat on facts, but then somewhat on biases, on being sort of black and white about everything and not thinking things critically. And it just turns into this drama. And just to illustrate, Lee J. Cobb he's almost ready to send this guy into the electric chair also because of his own hatred for his son. I mean, they had a huge falling out, and the son's roughly the same age as the kid on the stand. Again, this kid, he's a Puerto Rican, or he's either Puerto Rican or Mexican, and you have one guy in there who's a racist, and he's got a bias. So it sort of shows how we don't always see things clearly, how our biases come in, how things that are not necessarily true take over our logic. And it's psychologically really interesting that way, but also dramatically, the conflict. That is what drama's all about, conflict. And it just is incredible to see these people in one room in such an engaging fashion. And it's a remarkable debut. And he was only 33 years old. So yeah, that would be third on my list. But I would say in the 80s, The Prince of the City, which is similar to Serpico in the sense that a cop who does not sees the corruption and he stands up for what's right, which is to work with the internal investigations unit to stop it and to arrest the cops that are the bad, or as they call dirty. But the difference with Serpico was always a clean-cut cop, not corrupt at all. You see him as a rookie. The lead character here was a corrupt. He was working with drug dealers. He was working with prostitutes. He was a guy who was very much part of taking money and stuff like that. But once he's approached to work with an investigations force, his guilt comes in, and then he knows what the right thing to do is. But it's, they said that he would never have to give up his partners. But then little by little, then we start to see, well, who is really the bad people? Because they told him he was only going to have to do so much. And these investigators, certainly, they almost turn into a villain in the sense, because they put this guy through hell because they want more and more and more information. And he does have to give up his partners. He does have to destroy people he loved that were like brothers to him, destroy their lives. Then they even turn on him for the things that he had done before, because that came out, and even though he's been helping them, and so just the anxiety, the fact that people could have potentially killed him at any minute, is quite remarkable, and it's a wonderfully acted film. The entire cast is just absolutely phenomenal, and it is a high stake, intense, life or death situation every single scene. It's an incredible film. So Prince of the City, I think I'm definitely going to review that one day soon on the channel, on the video podcast, because it's a really breathtaking film. After that, I'll have to go to 1964's The Pawnbroker, because that's, talk about, it's one of the first early Hollywood films that dealt with the Holocaust. But this was what happens to someone after the Holocaust. And he's, the pawnbroker is played by Rod Steiger, and he's depressed. His whole family was killed in the Holocaust. He's lost everything. And now here he is in this, world where he learns that this pawn shop that he's running, that it's actually a front for these drug dealers, that they, it's not even anything that anyone actually cares about making any money off of. So these things and other incidents lead to him having flashbacks about losing his family. You see some of those shots of, just the jewelry being taken off the fingers of the different Jewish people in the camps, and just horrible on the when there's one moment where he looks out at the train in the subway, and it's as if he's seeing all the Jewish people on those trains being taken to the camps to be slaughtered. The sounds of a baby crying, but it really works. You get the feeling that he's been burying these things for so long, and he's just sort of really spiritually dead in a lot of ways, and you can understand why, and they're just coming back to haunt him. And I love how SIDNEY Lumet, the editing at that time was so innovative by just showing bits of flashbacks, a bit at a time, a shot of something, and then every flashback gets a little longer and a little longer. And of course, this man, his feelings are just dead, and in the end, he puts his hand through a nail in order to feel anything. So it's a brutal film. It's strong, very effective, strong emotionally, but it really gets inside of someone who went through something, these atrocities that I can't even imagine. So it's a phenomenal film with a phenomenal performance from Rod Steiger. And lastly, I'd have to give it to Serpico, 1973, with Al Pacino. The performance alone, as this cop, of course, who finds out that this is a corrupt system, this fresh-faced cop, and puts his life on the line in order to stop it. It's a little more simply told than Prince of the City. I prefer it over Prince of the City. On paper it seems like Prince of the City is a better film, more complex, more interesting. But there's something about, perhaps it's Pacino for me. There's something about the guy, because he didn't seem like a cop. He was this sort of perhaps not even totally that likable, but also like different individual. He was very individualistic. He liked ballet, and he was made fun of about that. He grew long hair. He took you know, he went to poetry lectures, he hung out in the village, you know, he was like this hippie cop, and he was not afraid to be who he was. And I really like that. I mean, you know, Lumet also loved individuality, and I really love people who are really uniquely themselves, that don't give a shit what anyone thinks. And that's, to me, why Serpico stands out the most. So a brilliant film, and we also have reviewed it on the YouTube channel. You can find it if you go back when we were called Coffee with Aliens at the Movies. We had originally actually done that on Instagram, so you can find it on our YouTube video podcast under the Coffee with Aliens American and Canadian movie reviews playlist if you haven't seen it yet. Well, thanks so much, folks. I hope you enjoyed this ranking video, and I always welcome the opportunity to talk about favorite filmmakers of mine, particularly SIDNEY Lumet. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.